to just make a couple of introductory remarks here. I live here in Ashland. I'm also volunteer with two of the organizations that are involved in this project, Whitten Woods. The first one is the New England Forestry Foundation. I've been a forest steward for them for quite a few years. They're probably best known for their property they have over in Center Harbor, the Chamberlain Reynolds Forest, which some of you may have walked through, trails and lake frontage on Squam Lake. What you might not know is they have two forests right here in Ashland, up on Levitt Hill. They also go into Holderness. They stretch from the shore of Little Squam Lake all the way up to the top of Levitt Hill. And so once a year, I pack my lunch, get my camera and my notebook, and walk around and monitor the land, which means trying to find the boundary markers, get a general idea of the condition of the woods, and report back. I've been doing that for quite a long time. About 10 years ago, I started doing the same thing for the Squam Lakes Conservation Society, which is another organization involved here. I started out just as a monitor. I got involved with Marge Glidden's project over on Highland Street. When that first started, I'm the monitor for that, so I walk around that property once a year. And over time, I've kind of worked my way up through the organization, and I'm an officer and a director now. Mainly, though, I'm a resident of Ashland. I've been living here quite a long time. I bought my house in 1984, old broken down farmhouse, and I've been living here full-time almost 20 years. So I've gotten a good chance to get to know the town, and I can honestly say there's nowhere else I'd rather live. I love living in Ashland, and it's got a lot of good small town qualities. It's got beautiful natural surroundings. It's got some interesting history, and it really has a nice small town community feel, I think. I mean, I know there's a lot of the usual disagreements over details. I think that's true in any town, but every now and then a project comes along that seems to really pull everybody together and get people's interest. And I think this is one of them. Another one that comes to mind to me is the covered bridge project from 25 years ago. That's right down by the town beach at the bottom of the hill where I live. And that was a great thing to see. So many people got involved in that. A bridge was built where the state was just going to build a regular concrete bridge. A beautiful covered bridge went up, and it really became a symbol of the town. And everybody got behind it, and floats and the parade and everything. And this project reminds me of that. Just because most of the people I've talked to have been really positive about it. Not every single person, but 9 out of 10, I would say. Anyway, I am a supporter of this. I've been watching it as it's developed this year, and the purpose of tonight's forum is to answer questions and just clarify the details for anybody who is interested or curious or wants to know. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to the Executive Director of the Squam Lakes Conservation Society, Roger LaRochelle.
And thanks to all of you for coming out on such a beautiful evening and spending it with us. We're here this evening to answer your questions, to get your input about this very exciting project that is underway. So the Squam Lakes Conservation Society has had an interest in this property for a long time, ever since Pete Francesco 10 years ago drove us up there and said this is a pretty special piece of property.
Hello, I'm Roger LaRochelle. I have the privilege of serving as Executive Director of the Squam Lakes Conservation Society. We're here to talk about Whitten Woods, which is a 414-acre property in Ashland. It's currently owned by the Nancy Daly Trust. Bill and Nancy Daly bought it about 11 years ago and had hoped to develop the property. and but are now considering conservation options in going forward. So what's before you is a image on the left-hand side of the Daly property. It says 440 acres. 414 is what the deed says, where you have a survey underway that will determine the exact acreage. In any case, we've signed a purchase and sales agreement a few weeks ago to do a bargain sale purchase of this property. So meanwhile, there's an appraisal and a survey again underway. The location of the property has frontage on Highland Street. It's less than a mile from the elementary school. It's not far from where you turn off on Owlbrook Road. The property extends from Highland Street over the crown of the hill down to Route 93 along the westerly side. To the south is the Glidden Forest, which is a conservation area that we did with the Glidden family about 7 years ago. It takes up a pretty considerable portion of Ashland. There's quite an extensive trail network on the property. There's woods roads that were cut for the logging operation that occurred some 17, 18 years ago. The trails are really in fine shape, and it's our hope to be able to put some universal trails on the property that would make the trails accessible to everyone. It's a steady grade, they're pretty wide, and it would be a terrific location for the first universal trails in the area here. There's a parking area on Highland Street. You can get 3 or 4 cars in there currently. The hope is to expand that, and that's the starting point for the trail network going up from Highland Street. Here are a couple of images of the crowns of the hill. This is South Peak on the right side, North Peak along the left side, looking east over Little Squam Lake and Big Squam Lake. In the background is Red Hill and the Ossipee Mountains. There's one little stretch of Route 3 right in the middle of the photograph. Looking the other way to the west, you can see Mount Cardigan in the background. You get a better feel for the extent of the hilltops. You can see the little clearing along the South Peak area. And then on the North Peak, there was a little cutout that afforded a view up there. So this is the view of the flank looking, if you will, from the Squam Lakes west. As I mentioned, it's 414 acres with universal trails. The idea is that it will have ongoing forestry management. There are a lot of uses that we still need to identify in terms of the extent of the trail network. Will mountain bikes be allowed, snowmobilers, etc.? So this is part of the spirit of this evening's forum, is to talk about the various uses, what kinds of activities have you done on the property, what are you interested in, and how will that inform us in creating a conservation plan in going forward, in which we can incorporate the various uses in the property and make the property accessible to all. The structure of the project is that the owner of the land, of the underlying fee, would be the New England Forestry Foundation. We've partnered with them in other instances. They own the Chamberlain Reynolds Forest on Big Squam Lake, and the Stevens Forest and the Newsom Forest in Ashland. And Whit Beals is here this evening to talk about New England Forestry Foundation and introduce you to them. We would hold, we the Conservation Society, Squam Lakes Conservation Society, would hold a conservation easement which would ensure its perpetual conservation. We would hold an easement that would protect this land for all the days to come. And within that conservation easement, we will identify the various uses within the property, what's allowed, what's restricted, and how do we uphold the conservation values in going forward for all the days before us. So things like what areas would be cleared, what would be cut, what's the trail extent of the trail network, and what kinds of activities would be allowed. The trail system would be maintained, both manufactured and maintained by the Squam Lakes Association. They maintain currently 50 miles of trails in the Squam area. They're the perfect partner to have in this project, in that they know about trail construction and maintenance of a trail network. On the right-hand side is a depiction of the development scheme that was used in the past year and the past few years. It was marketed as as 2 Kingdom lot sites with a very long driveway. The price tag was for over $1 million, and it never happened. There just wasn't the level of activity in the market. Just wasn't really interested in establishing this as a estate class property. So enter the conservation. We've been talking with the family for some time, and with the many partners that have joined together in this project, and all the residents of Ashland, people that have come forward with an interest of this. We really think it can be done. We've had some hikes out on the property. This was a moonrise hike that we took beginning of April when there was still ice on the lakes, and lo and behold, we got up to the top, and the moon came out just about on cue. There were some other hikes. Pete Helm, our stewardship director, went out there with some Holderness School students to help map all the trails. We gave them GPS units, and they ran around the hillside, captured the location of the trails, and gave us some feedback on what they felt was important to consider for conservation. Since then, there have been various individuals going up there to hike. Looking at the numbers, the last appraisal for the property, which was December 2014, the value was $890,000. The owners are willing to sell it for $600,000, which is what we call a bargain sale. To get the whole thing done, we'll need $660,000. To date, we've raised $530,000. We have $75,000 in grant applications through the Amelia Peabody Foundation and the LCHIP program here in New Hampshire. So the remainder to be raised is $62,500, something we feel is very achievable in going forward. It's our hope to have 100 donors, new donors to the campaign. And there's been tremendous momentum in dealing with all the various organizations in town, and we're pretty hopeful that we can get to the finish line. So we have some envelopes here this evening for you to take, and they say, yes, we want to help keep Ashland's Whitten Woods accessible to hikers, skiers, snowmobilers, hunters, and all outdoor enthusiasts today and forever. One of the questions that has cropped up frequently has been, what is going to be the impact of property taxes? Currently, in this on this property and the 414 acres, 340 acres are in current use. They realize $457. 74 acres was never put into current use, so it's taxed at a residential rate. And that generates about $6,200. So if those 74 acres were put into conservation, they would only generate about $100. So some might say, well, that's going to cost the town of Ashland $6,000. But when you look at the total budget of Ashland, which exceeds over $20 million, and you look at it across each of the taxable lots, yes, it would be a little less than $4 per lot. But I think the real question is what does Whitten Woods add to the town of Ashland? How does it improve the community? How does it make it more attractive to attract commercial investment? And how does it become an amenity to all the residents of Ashland and beyond? So I think that's the spirit of why we're gathered here this evening, is to really talk about how this project would add value to Ashland and really improve the overall quality of life here in the community, and be something that all residents can be proud of. This is part of a network of projects that are underway through the Squam Lakes Conservation Society. We call it the Squam Uplands. It is our goal and aspiration to conserve all the land above 1,000 feet in elevation. A good part of this is already done. You could see on the left-hand side how the Whitten Woods project fits into this. It's a total of about 7,000 acres, of which 42% of it is already in conservation. There are two projects underway this year, this Whitten Woods project that we're talking about, and the Beebe River project that's being spearhead between us and the Conservation Fund to the north. That's a 6,500 acre tract that includes the Beebe River, which extends from the Squam Range to the White Mountain National Forest. That's the second leg of what we're hoping to get done this year. And the map to the right shows the extent of the conservation land within this Squam Uplands territory, which is, again, the area above 1,000 feet. So what I want to do now is to show you a little video that will really bring this into focus for you. And then lastly, before I jump to the video, this is the banner that we had made. This will be at the Ashland Parade on the 4th of July. We would love to have you join us, but beyond the parade, we really need some help in getting the word out, and over time we'll need help, to maintain the trails and put up boundary signs. And right now, for the time being, we're really focused on the campaign and what we need to do to get the resources to get us to the finish line. So please help spread the word and help make this project a reality. Okay, here we are approaching the Squam watershed. This is taken from our GIS mapping. This is a good time to swallow your Dramamine because we're going to take a flight over the Squam Range. Everything in yellow represents the land above 1,000 feet, so this is the target area of the Squam Uplands campaign. You can see the rattlesnakes, the Squam Range, Mount Prospect, and now we're approaching Church Hill on the left, and the Whitten project, which is outlined in red. You can see the trail network in purple there, and this is what it would look like if we're successful in putting Whitten Woods in conservation. All of the dark green is the land that's already been protected, and the yellow is the target area and what we're working on. And you can see how handsomely the Whitten project fits in to this overall project plan.
But here, 1816 does go down in history as the year without a summer, or 1800 froze to death. Now, some of the tales that are told are rather exaggerated. There was really not 2 feet of snow in Bridgewater in June. But there were 2 inches of snow in Bristol in June, on June 11th. That snow melted soon, and it wasn't the snow so much, it was the cold. A series of cold waves that started in May, killing frosts that destroyed or damaged crops. They began in May, then there was a frost from June 6 to 11, which is when the snowstorms and snow squalls of legend occurred. The farmers replanted after that June frost, but then there was another heavy frost on July 8th and 9th, and then 3 more killing frosts in a 2.5 week period in August. And then there were more frosts in mid to late September, but by that time the game was all over anyways, because everything had been destroyed that needed to have a warm period. Most of the corn was destroyed, almost a complete failure in this area. Grass could not grow, so there was not enough hay to feed the livestock over the winter, and very little wheat was raised that year. Now, there were some exceptions. If your farm was near a large body of water, such as Governor's Island and Lake Winnipesaukee, or if it was on a high upland south-facing slope, corn and wheat did survive in those places. And Reuben Whitten was one of those lucky farmers who had a south-facing slope above the valley where the cool air gathers in the valley, so he had enough sunlight to save his crops. And he was able to raise 40 bushels of wheat, which he very carefully harvested and he dried around his fireplace in his little house. And he could have sold that wheat at a very high price, because the price of wheat that year, 1816, reached the highest level it would see in the 19th century and for about 3/4 of the 20th century. It was gold. I mean, but instead of selling it, he gave it to his neighbors. He parceled it out to them, and he would not accept any money in return. So it's this act of generosity that we remember him for. And 30 years later, when he died in 1847, the children of the families he helped in 1816 paid for his gravestone, which is in the little cemetery opposite the Zox house, back in the woods, above the Lyford house, on the other side of the road from the house, his own house. The same cemetery also contains the graves of his wife and of his daughter Mary and his son-in-law Calvin Roberts. The Roberts had a son, Elford, who later went on to work in Concord in the quarries. When he retired, the early 20th century, he went to live in Guilford, and one of the things he did when he was retired, he was 80 years old, was he put his stone cutting skills to build a larger monument for his parents and his grandparents, which he erected in the little family cemetery in 1911. And on this monument, he placed an inscription about this story he had been told, probably from his mother, who was alive in 1816, and also from his grandparents, who he would have known. And so he summarized the story in the inscription. Cold season of 1816 raised 40 bushels of wheat on this land, which kept his family and neighbors from starvation. This monument has become very well known and has helped to spread Reuben Whitten's story well beyond this area. In fact, there are very few physical artifacts left of the cold year of 1816, particularly in New England. So if you want to illustrate a book or a magazine article or a film with something tangible, this is one of the few things you can find. And so it has sort of kept, this second monument has kept this story alive for almost 2 centuries now. And if I have a little time, could I speak about the Whitten house?
Briefly,
Okay. Well, his house still survives. And there's not, I mean, you can't, aside from the cemetery, there's not much left of the farm. It's all been subdivided and grown up to forests in many places. After his death, his son sold the farm. A larger house was built on the farm. And this small house that the Whittens had lived in became sort of a small house for tenants or for farm workers. But in the 1870s, when there was a great need for workers' housing down in the village, when the mills were growing and expanding, the old house was moved down to North Main Street, essentially in the area where the Booster Club's parking lot and tennis courts are. And there were 4 of these houses, small houses that had been moved in from the countryside to create a little, it was almost like a trailer park. They were about the same size. And it was all for workers' housing, and essentially low-income housing, basically. And then in 1904, that land was subdivided, and the Whitten house was left on a very small little lot, which went through half a dozen owners in the next 65 years. In 1969, the land was sold to the town of Ashland by the Knapps, the last owners. But they reserved the building for their own use, and they presented it to the Ashland Historical Society, essentially because it had been Reuben Whitten's house, and that was the reason everybody wanted to save it. Now, in 1974, the Society did move it to the back of the Whipple House property, where it's been ever since, and we put it on a nice foundation and did some repairs. But essentially, we've been distracted by all kinds of different projects over the years, and never been able to fully restore it. That's always been our intention. But now that the 200th anniversary of 1816 is approaching, we're hoping to use this opportunity to actually do some fundraising and to complete the restoration of the house. So we've recently had the house placed on the the State Register of Historic Places So it's just been recognized by the state as an important historic building. And for more info, you can see our new website, which is rubenwhitten.org. So, thank you.
Thank you. It's just a great story to tie into this whole project. So we're going to open the floor up to testimonials, and then we're going to have a little breakout session and address some of the concerns, but a chance for others to speak. You've heard, from us. Yes, sir.
I'm Pete George from here in Ashland. I'm just curious about the cost. You kind of lost me in all the presentation.
Yep.
And there's X amount of dollars left to be raised, and I thought you said it was Ashland's responsibility. And so I don't think that's really what you meant. And it's very confusing to me, at least, to know who the owner is of this property, what the effect is on the taxes that we lose, and how much additional it will cost us. And those sorts of things. I don't know who's in charge of the property. I don't know what Ashland's role is in the property. Who makes the decisions on what can or cannot be done on that?
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the overall structure of the property, the ownership would be New England Forestry. And New England Forestry is as Whit had mentioned, is a large landowner of land that's conserved for the public benefit. Going right to the point of, will it cost Ashland anything? The answer to that is no, and that's been a pretty major component of this entire project. When we started talking about it, we talked to members of the town and said, hey, what do you think? Is the town of Ashland in a position that they would like to participate financially? We all know there's a lot going on in the town. We're all working hard to better those circumstances. So what happened as a result of that dialogue, really, and really with Roger's leadership, is the potential use of the property has attracted capital from elsewhere. So it's as if the community, you don't have enough money to do the project, as a developer, I know this pretty well. If you don't have it yourself, you can reach out to others. And we've really been amazed by how many people are willing to invest in the community of Ashland, really for the benefit of the entire watershed. Going right to the question of taxes, the property produces very little in taxes. It's under $6,000 a year. And my own experience in developing real estate is, there's times when you have to tighten the expenses. You have to turn off light bulbs and you have to do all that stuff to survive, say, a recession. There's other times when you really have to invest in your real estate. You have to invest in your community, invest in your property. That's really what the opportunity here is. There's an opportunity for a couple hundred people to invest in the community of Ashland to benefit the community in a way that this community hasn't seen for a long time. Create an amenity that could, it will affect lodging, it will affect gas, it will affect restaurants, it will affect assessed values. It has long legs for basically zero cost to the town.
Great. Jane?
I just want to say that I grew up, I'm Jane Sawyer, most of you probably know me anyway, but I grew up on Highland Street, and this piece of property actually was owned by Phyllis and Ray Small, and Ray Small was a great steward of the land. After a long, harsh winter, he was always, all summer long, going up in there and opening up the trails and everything so he could drive his Jeep around to check all the property. And my brothers and I used to hunt up there with my dad, and we used to walk up in there in the summertime. We used to often walk from Highland Street up over Peavy Hill and come down McDonald Farm Road. And it's just a neat piece of property, and I think it has the unique ability to be available to a lot of different uses to many different types of people that can access it all times of the year. And I really think it would be a great enhancement, not just to Ashland, but to our future. I think it will really change the town. The town sees the future. I think it would be a really good thing to support.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Joan Glidden. My mother, Marjorie, has the piece of property that doesn't quite abut this property, but right nearby. Yeah, my sister Jane, and we grew up there, right next to Jane. And as kids, we all rode our horses out there every day, out there trotting those trails. That was part of our childhood, we grew up there. I am so excited that this is happening. I think this is a fabulous opportunity for the town of Ashland, and we need this. Our town needs some positive thing to happen. This is a wonderful thing. I thank you very much for taking the lead here.
Great.
Thank
Well, Liz have led the way, so no problem. Yeah, great.
Jane?
I have a question, and this goes back to what Joan referred to as we were wild Indians. We didn't even have saddles. We just galloped all through there. And there was a house. It was fallen down, and we called it Bill Eagles. Janie, you remember that?
Yeah, Bill Eagles Field.
Bill Eagles Field. And I don't know who the heck Bill Eagle was, or if he was a real person, but there was a fallen down house, and it was right near where, because we watched the highway be built. When we were kids, we'd ride up there and we'd see the earth movers coming through, because 93 was just being built. So we'd sneak up through the woods and we'd get up on the ridge and we'd look down and watch those huge earth movers come through, you know, and they did it at night. So you had night excavating, I guess you'd call it. But there was this fallen down house called Bill Eagles. And is that part of this?
The surveying, the actual property still needs to be determined. There's some kind of squishy areas, particularly on the north side. So we're working, and we're only starting to turn over some of the stones and getting to the story. We'd love to hear the story. I mean, Tom and Laura owned that property for a while and stewarded it for a while, and you know, there's Laura's Lookout, there's that dimension, and then there's other dimensions going back further into time. So perhaps, you know, through the Historical Society, and, you know, we want to gather. So please, you know, you guys know this property. We're kind of coming into it, you know.
We collected old horse harness. There was horse harnesses in there, in this fallen down house, which is probably a very bad thing to do. Because it was probably not a safe place to be, you know, as a kid, out there on a horse with no saddle.
We have some materials.
We called all that home.
So we want to hear all about, you know, the story of the land and how it was used and how it can best be used. So thanks. Yes, Laura.
I just, as Roger said, my husband and I owned the land before Mr. Daly. I won't go into the history of it, but I have to say there were a lot of people of Ashland who loved that land and told us very firmly that they had blueberry rights and this and that. And they were right. And we had a very small place on Squam Lake, and we hoped to build on that land, and we never could figure out a way to develop it.
Yeah,
But
we were right
in
there
the
with you.
meantime, it had been forested very badly by a New York company who sold it for a song to us. And we bought it because it had a wonderful feeling. It had an ecology to it. We care about that. We care about the watershed. And I'm just really moved by the idea that both as an emergent woods, we don't know how species interact. This is a chance to observe that. Everyone thinks of Squam Lake as Holderness and Center Harbor, but this is the watershed of Squam Lake. And the profile of Ashland, we'd never gone up Highland Street till we looked at this land. And all we did was plant clover and bang out those roads, and the guys from Ashland wondered, the kids put up that picnic bench that I'm sure many of you have hiked up to. And all I can say is we're donating what we can to this. We think it's a really important piece, and we think it's the town's piece. So we're really grateful to NEP and Squam Lakes and Conservation Society for taking the lead on this. It's a wonderful opportunity.
That's great. You know, we've talked a lot about connections. They could be history, they could be family, they could be love of land, they could be biking, they could be hiking, they could be a lot of different things, but it's one of the few properties where all of that kind of comes together in community. So, right on.
Arlene Stoke. I live in Ashland. I love Ashland. This is the place I want to be. And I'm extremely excited to see a project like this in Ashland, because I think that the town needs this type of project. I think it will be a draw to the town. And I love the outdoors. I love to hike, and that's why many of us are around here, is we love the outdoors. So this project is very exciting to me. I do have a question on When do you, and what's the process for determining what the uses of the land would be?
Good question. You wanna?
I'll take the first pass, and I'm going to use one of Barry's terms, and that's site control. The first step is to purchase the property, right, secure it. That would be, ownership would go to New England Forestry. So we wrote a purchase and sales conservation society that's assignable. We'll assign it to NEF, they will complete the sale. Then the next step is the conservation easement. Well, to do the easement, you need to understand the values, what's important about the property, and then how might you use it. So over the next 8 months or so, assuming that we can raise the funds, we have until August 31st on the purchase and sales to deliver or not. If we're lucky enough, fortunate enough to actually close on the property, then we'll begin the process of really identifying what kinds of uses, what do trails look like, how compatible are the trails with the forestry, right? How can it, work together? People hunt up there, people are going to walk up there, how does it all come together? And getting the Swan Lakes Association, where the trail experts, is really key. Barry's also on the SLA board. So we'll have some time to organize the uses, but we need to hear from, the snowmobilers and the people that use the property today. Yeah.
So that's really the second leg of the journey. So the first leg is, can we get to the point that we can actually acquire the property with the goal of establishing what, we've termed the universal and community trail system. But the thinking is that it would involve, biking, it would involve adaptive uses, it would involve, everything that's there today. It wouldn't take away anything that's there, it would add to it. And the really kind of the unique palette is our ability as a group to work together, I think, is what's going to create the best circumstance for our community. In our community meeting, the general area, the things we do. And the amazing part about that is, we've done a little bit of research. There's really very little adaptive or universal trail systems anywhere. There's one in Utah, there's one in Colorado, there's some stuff in Norway. But when you look around, it's really hard to find. So we've got a huge opportunity in front of us to really create something unique. Slade had mentioned a few over Vermont that we're taking a look at. So I think that, I'm looking forward to getting into the study piece of it, and figuring out how that comes together.
And the grade on this property is really perfect for that kind of universal, and mountain bikers and, right, get out there. We were going to go into a kind of a touchy-feely group thing, but this is really working out pretty well, so I think we're just going to go with this. So I need a volunteer. So this project is called Whitten Woods after Reuben Whitten, and Katie tells us that she's been talking with someone at the Common Man, and they're thinking about coming up with a sandwich called the Whitten Reuben. So I'd like someone to stand up and say Whitten Reuben 3 times really fast. Come on, someone's.
No!
Come on, Katie. Whitten Reuben. It's too easy. All right, so what else concerns you about the project?
So what, you said by August, you have to come up with the money by August?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, August 31 is.
So you got $62,000 by August 31?
Yeah, and that's why Barry said we need the hands of many at this stage. Jane, I'm going to come back to you. Let me let Kathleen.
The questions I've been receiving is the hunting issue.
Mm-hmm.
How can hunters and mountain bikers and hikers coexist at the same time on the same trail?
Half the years though.
You do it now.
Yeah, they have over time, and that's a management question, and I think when you go into it and think about it and be purposeful about it, you can figure all of that out, right? Because hunting, happens everywhere, and there are hiking trails everywhere, particularly in the swamp area. So these things are not incompatible. I know there are safety concerns, and we should deal with those safety concerns right up front. I think, hiking and mountain biking, some people think, well, are those incompatible? Not really. People do it all the time, right? You guys know better than us, right? There's ways to do it, but you have to be smart about it. the way that you manage the property. So Whit and I picked up 10 cans of Bud Light on the top. Right?
empty, unfortunately.
Yeah. But being the beer snobs that we were, In any case, it's a management. Who's gonna go up there, how's it gonna be used, and who's gonna care for it? And it's not going to be the Squam Lakes Conservation Society and the New England Forestry Foundation as organizations. We need people, volunteers, to help us manage and look after, and that's what Frank does as a steward, and that's what we'll need help of many, to really look after this property carefully.
I just wanted to add, because the Forestry Foundation is my neighbor where I live, there are two big forests up there, along with some other quite a bit of other conserved land. My own is part of it. I don't post my land against anything, and neither does the Forestry Foundation. There's a major snowmobile trail that goes up behind my barn, goes over the top of the hill. There are certain times a year, there are hunters galore up there. I mean, everybody knows when the hunting seasons are, you look out during that time of year. I walk my dog out there, but I make a lot of noise during that. And it all works very well. I mean, there are hikers up there. Barry used to hike over from here way over to Coxborough Road every day. And I think you were on the snowmobile trail part of the time. And so during hunting season, trucks are up there, guys are in the woods. If I see them, I say hello, just say look out for the dog, don't shoot at the house, that kind of thing. And it works. It works fine, and I don't see why this would be